are applied and in which they are, and it seems to work very well.
Thank you for your call. Well, it's time to say good night there. This is your host, Fred Stafford, and we've been listening to Wayne Laufenberg giving his views on the various issues facing our state.
Thank
you for coming, Wayne, and we wish you good luck.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure.
Good night.
Well, welcome once again to this edition of the Cow Report. I'm your host, Chuck Lee, and this is a beautiful Monday night, Fred, and of course it's August, what is it today, August 21st, Fred? Something like that?
Yeah,
Somewhere in that range?
Yeah, that's about right.
All right, well, of course, that's Fred, the true Stafford, my old trusty sidekick, been with me for years now. We haven't really ascertained how many years, Fred, but it's been a few.
Today,
Of course,
this is 22nd, sir.
Of course, you know, Fred, we are gearing up for the fall season here.
You betcha.
2 weeks from tonight, we're rolling out the 1994-95 season. Of course, we don't do much for reruns. We try and do everything live. But as usual, Fred, we got a lot to talk about. Boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about. And to start out the show, we always try to stump old Fred the True Stafford with a tough question on what happened on this date in history, Fred.
Yes.
And the date this time is 1858, Fred.
1858.
August 21st. Probably about 7 o'clock at night. Hot August night down in Illinois. Torches burning. A lot of excitement in the crowd.
1858.
Two men step to the podium. One speaks first.
And was that
And
the Lincoln-Douglas debates?
there you have it, Fred. You're batting 1,000. Still in there. The Lincoln-Douglas debate. That was the first one. 1858. They bring national attention to both men, Fred.
Mm-hmm.
And they call the Douglas the little giant, Fred. He was only about 5'3". And of course, Abe Lincoln was 6'4", and then he wore a big stovepipe hat on top of that, made him look close to 7 foot tall with that hat. So there's quite a mismatch there as far as size, but I guess Douglas held his own and got to be called the little giant out of those debates. And as you know, Fred, C-SPAN is showing those.
Yes.
I think there was a total of how many of them? 5?
I'm not quite
five,
sure.
5 or 7. It was an odd number. All right, Fred, it's getting harder to stump you. I know that much. Well, Fred, you know on the program here several months back we mentioned Norplant. We had somebody called in and they were kind of mad at us for talking about, saying that it was a great thing for the women to have this kind of like splints shoved up in the inside of their arm, Fred, and they stay in there for several years and keep a woman, cause a woman not to
Conceive.
be impregnated. Well, I cut out a little ad from a law firm, Fred, with an 800 number, and the headline says, Norplant contraceptive implants. Recipients of the Norplant contraceptive device have contacted Miles Lord and Associates concerning medical complications they have experienced with the implant. Our investigation has shown these problems are not the fault of the physicians, but attributed to the manufacturers. We are assisting these women in their claims against the manufacturers. If you have experienced medical problems with the Norplant contraceptive implant, please call for a free confidential consultation. And we can give that number off the air, but we don't want to advertise this company, Fred, but there's some proof, Fred. There are already complications. It's only been on the air, on on the market for, what, less than a year? They've already
Not
got
too-
complications.
Not too long.
Not too long. So there you have it, North Point.
Well, you know, ironically, you can't tamper with nature and thwart nature.
Uh-huh.
Everything that you do to thwart nature also has its drawbacks.
Well, you're putting a foreign substance in your arm there, and you're asking the body to accept it as something natural, and it's probably going to, reject it. It's just like the women that had the breast implants. Now they got all kinds of problems. The stuff's breaking. The silicone's spreading through their body. They don't know what kind of diseases they're going to end up with out of this deal. And it's too bad, Fred, that this stuff is dumped on the public before it's tested further and really tested heavily to make sure it's safe.
Yes.
Kind of like that stuff in your drink there, Fred, that BGH stuff. They never did test that stuff before they dumped it on the market. That's why you can't sell any of that stuff.
Well, I'm not trying to sell it.
Well, you're advertising.
I wouldn't advertise it either.
You don't want anyone to know what's in there, do you?
I don't want, well, I would like to know, and I wouldn't buy anything that it's in.
That's why you got to have truth in advertising and truth in labeling. Okay, Fred, what do you got there?
Well,
Let's have something.
we got lots of things. Minnesota governor apologized to conservative challenger for Hitler remark. Governor Arne Carlson of Minnesota, a pro-abortion Republican, told the locally published American Jewish World that only a narrow sliver of Republicans support his primary opponent, Alan Quist. History, however, according to Carlson, demonstrates that a narrow sliver has the ability to take over an entire system, and that clearly is how Hitler started out. The comment spurred a political tornado, and Carlson subsequently issued a statement of regret on August the 10th.
Well, you know, Fred, some of those troublemakers from Minnesota have been invited over to Wisconsin to push the same poison over here, and they've met with the CPR, supposedly the party within the Republican Party, the CPR party within the larger Eau Claire County Party. There's a smaller left-wing splinter group called the CPR, and I don't even know exactly what it stands for, but now they're picking up on this Hitler thing, this Hitler theme too. Anybody that's a Christian or conservative or believes in the Second Amendment rights, all of a sudden they're Hitlerites or pseudo-Nazis or whatever. They're trying to tack that label on everybody. So
well, you know, I never try to call people names because we're all entitled to our own views without calling each other names. And let's stick to the facts.
All right.
We don't need any lies.
Well, there was a little editorial in the paper, and I don't know if you read it.
No, I didn't read the
Well,
editorial.
since you
tonight.
brought that up about the liberals in Minnesota going against the conservatives over there and comparing them to Hitler, you might want to read that out loud.
Oh, how I recall. This is from the Eau Claire Leader-Telegram. I saw this. I'm a citizen of the United States, an active member of the Republican Party, and proud to be an American. I'm a citizen by choice, not by birth. I was born in Germany during World War II. My family and I suffered through the bombing and destruction of our home on several occasions. While I'm proud of my native country, I'm not proud of the chaos and destruction that was created by the Hitler regime. I don't think anybody could be proud of that. But in particular, I'm saddened by the horrors of the Holocaust and the lives lost in Hitler's concentration camps. With this background, you can imagine the panic that I felt as I participated in the 3rd District Caucus of the Republican Party held in Rice Lake on April 24th, 93, and listened to a speech by Donald Brill. During his speech, he was recounting his experiences as a U.S. soldier during World War II. He told the audience, as best as I can recall, personal items were hard to come by in the area in which he was stationed, but he had no problem getting soap to cleanse his body. He stated the soap he used came from the fat of exterminated Jews. You can imagine the shock that I felt.
Well, I think he said it for the shock value.
Yeah.
That there he was washing his hands, and somebody told him what he was using for soap, and it was abhorrent to him. He was shocked and sickened by it. I thought I was at that, but I didn't get where he was trying to give any pro-Hitler speech or anything by any means. He was speaking to the 3rd Congressional District of the grand old party, supposedly, you know.
That's the horror that he felt when he learned where that soap came from.
Yeah. I don't think he was trying to shock anybody.
Correct.
So, Fred, maybe this is just
And that was signed
Maybe it's a
incidentally by Krista Hansen, a member of the CPR, I believe.
maybe it's just coincidence, or it could be that the Minnesota radicals which have came over here and trained the CPR group in left-wing tactics. This could be one of their broadsides. Okay, Fred, getting back to a lighter note. Now, you did so good on that first question. I want to get you another one here real quick before we start taking calls. This one is from August 22nd, which happens to be today. So this one should be real easy. And it was 1989. Baseball game, Fred. This is going to be a tough one. You're going to have to really think on this one, because I don't know how much of a baseball fan you are. Texas Rangers. Pitcher. Recorded his major league record 5,000th strikeout.
Well, that must be Ryan.
Boy, oh boy, Fred, you're on a roll.
I can't think of his first name, but...
Well, that's close enough. It's Nolan Ryan,
Yeah.
Texas Rangers. You're getting threads, so it's you're better than my computer at home with these answers. I can't believe it. Okay, what do you got there, Fred?
This is also from the Wanderer, which is it's printed at 201 Ohio Street, St. Paul. Your voice is needed. The Washington-based Traditional Values Coalition is sponsoring a religious freedom assembly in Washington, D.C. on September 13th at noon in the U.S. Capitol. The rally, featuring prominent religious and political leaders, was called to bring attention to the assault on religious liberty and the First Amendments conducted by the Clinton administration. For more information on the September 13th rally, write to the Traditional Values Coalition, 139 C Street Southeast, Washington, D.C., 2000, and that's 20003. Now, and that's 139 C Street Southeast, Washington, D.C., 20003. And that's the Traditional Values Coalition, and they're going to have a rally on September the 13th at noon at the U.S. Capitol.
September 13th, that's on a Tuesday. It's election day for a lot of primaries. You know, in Minnesota and Wisconsin it is anyway. Okay, Fred. Good job. So how do you read that? What do you get out of it?
Well, I think that those of us that can go there should go there.
Yeah? Okay. All right. Fred, since I got the cameraman in here, Roy, can you zero in on this? That's Roy Rogers Hoff, engineer and cameraman extraordinaire. This is the new Minnesota license plate, Fred. It's got some interesting things on it.
Yes.
If we can get a zoom in on that. Of course, we're still on there. Okay, I'll adjust here. There. This new Minnesota driver's license, Fred, it's got some interesting things on it.
Yes.
And after we show it a little bit, then we'll go back to the two screen. But anyway, that picture up in the corner is not a picture, Fred. That's a digital image.
Yes.
Made with a computer, not a photograph. And that's done so it's harder to make counterfeit ones. They have a lot of problems with underage drinking in both Minnesota and Wisconsin. So Minnesota's going to a digital image, not a photograph. But there's also some other interesting things on there, Fred. There's a hologram at the top. It doesn't show it on here, but at the top there's a hologram that will be right in there to keep down the counterfeiting. And there's, in several different spots, there's the owner's, there's a driver license number that's on several different spots, and it's done to keep down the counterfeiting. But one interesting thing I saw, Fred, I was on the back side of it. And maybe we can get another close-up of the back side of it, the driver's license card.
Yes.
This part here is the back side. at the top there's a magnetic strip that stores a lot of information on each driver. At the bottom there's a barcode, just like at the grocery store, on your food. You're getting a barcode on your driver's license now.
Uh-huh.
Like the one that you use when you go check out at the grocery store?
You can use it in any bar?
Well, it's a barcode, Fred, but it's there. Whoops. There's your barcode right at the bottom. Here's your magnetic strip that will be able to hold all kinds of information on you. So, and I'm sure the police cars will have a credit card type machine that you can just slide that through real quick and automatically have information on each driver. And there's a spot for the organ donor, and with that barcode, Fred, I could conceivably see where they could actually have you use that when you're shopping and stuff. You could just flash that in the grocery store and use it for all kinds of different identification purposes. You can even use it for a debit card to do your shopping. Could be the all-in-one card that we've been looking for all these years, Fred.
Uh-huh.
And you hold it in the palm of your hand. You'll probably have a secret number that you keep in the forehead so that nobody else has your PIN number, like on your time card. Does that remind you of anything, Fred? Does that ring any bells?
Ring any bells?
Yeah. About the palm of your hand or your forehead?
Blow the whistle, toot the bell.
Evidently, we have a call, Fred. We had a little trouble earlier with our mic, so we're going to tape the mic on there so it's nice and secure. We're going to go to a call. I think it was on line 1, and we're going to try it. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, this is Buck.
Oh, Buck Johnson?
This is Buck from western Wisconsin.
Okay, Buck,
Hello,
how's
Buck.
the fishing and hunting up there?
Not too bad. That mark of the beast you're getting at there?
Well,
Right.
didn't really want to say it. I was
All
trying,
right.
just asking Fred if it looked like it.
I beat the common man calling tonight,
Yeah.
and I guess you're out bowling Monday Night Football again as usual.
Well, that's good. Glad to hear it.
Yeah, no, don't hang up on me. I got to ask you a quick question on the crime bill.
All right.
Now, that passed the House today, right? And they whittled, what, $3 billion out of the $33 billion?
Yeah, actually, it passed yesterday, but yeah, you're
Okay,
at 33. It went. They whittled it down to 30. Yeah.
Did they cut that provision out about that midnight basketball?
I think that some of that stuff stayed in there.
What do you think about that midnight basketball there? Ain't that kind of insulting to those inner city kids? It ain't really doing nothing good for them. It's just keeping them playing ball and not really getting them educated. It's just keeping them off the streets supposedly, but rumor has it they're stealing cars to go to the basketball games now.
Yeah, or they could be. I don't know. It's a toss-up whether it's going to help or not. In some inner cities where they stay up till 3 or 4 in the morning running the streets, maybe it will make a difference, but I doubt if it's going to do much in the suburbs.
Sounds to me like it's just a symptom that they're trying to treat instead of the root cause. You don't see many of the rich folk kids playing midnight basketball. They're sleeping to get up for school the next day.
Yeah.
Or to go to work.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, there's other things in that bill, too. They concentrate a lot of programming, social programming, in the areas where they have this. In other words, you live in a project, if you're a minority, if a single-parent family, and all that, you can get on the basketball team. Now, they do go on to school through this program, too, which is good. But it's not all that it's cracked up to be.
Well, I could see where someone's going to say, well, I can't work tomorrow. I got a basketball game tonight at midnight.
Yeah, plus it just seems like the Clinton and his guys, they act like we're too stupid to take care of ourselves. And that certainly ain't the case.
Well,
You're right.
Unfortunately, on this crime bill, it started out about $22 billion a few weeks ago. Then it got sidelined into these committees where they start compromising, and some guy throws in some pork here, while another guy gets excited and says, well, hey, if he's throwing in pork, I got to get some too. I got to get reelected. So he throws in his $10 million of pork. Then another guy says, well, man, I got troubles too. I mean, there's an anti-incumbency thing going on at home. I need to have some little pork programs for my district. I
guess,
gotta get
you know,
reelected.
if we could elect all Jewish representatives and senators, there wouldn't be any pork.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it ended up they tacked on almost $13 billion worth of pork by the time it came out of them committees. So that's why they all got nervous last week and said, "Hey, we can't pass this thing. They'll crucify us at the polls."
Yeah.
So then they voted her down.
They passed it today in the House.
Well, I'm talking about a week ago when they chickened out.
Well, he's got control of both the House and Senate. I don't know why he cries about gridlock. He could shove anything he wanted through, but I think he's afraid that they're going to be blamed for this fiasco of the social spending.
Ironically, it's been the Republicans that have put him over the top on several crucial issues in the last year and a half.
Yeah. You still running for office?
Oh yeah, I'm running all the way to November 9th, and we're going to take it in the home stretch and win, and we'll be in Washington in January.
Well, hopefully you can educate the people on the economics.
Well, I sure ain't going to try and shove all this pork down their throats.
Yeah, guy can only take so much of that. Well, you guys are ranked number one here. Monday night's slipping down bad,
All right.
but you're right up at the top. Well, this is Buck signing off. I got to go check my trap line.
Okay. Take care out there now, and watch those beavers out there, because they do bite.
Okay.
All right. Okay, Fred. So you got up to 33 billion, Fred.
Yes.
Then they whittled her back Sunday. Through exhaustion over the weekend, they whittled it down to 30 billion and said, "Boy, we saved you $3 billion." And now this is what they delivered to us. When they porked it up 10 billion. There's still 10 billion of pork in it.
Mm.
And probably the original $20 billion one had pork in it, Fred. But now they're going to come back to us and say, "Hey man, we saved you $3 billion. Re-elect me." Do you think they deserve to be re-elected, Fred?
Many of them do not. I think if we were to check their voting records closely, there's no way that some of them should be returned to office.
Well, unfortunately, Clinton says to these liberal Republicans, "Hey, I'll send my people in. We'll campaign for you. If I have to, I'll come in there myself and campaign to get you reelected." So people like Reich and Reno and all them, they go fan out in the countryside and help these liberal Republicans that are helping him pass these bills, help them get reelected. If that doesn't work, they'll throw a few. Like recently in Wisconsin, they bought up a bunch of surplus milk just to push the price up. It was just a political payback. It spiked the price a little bit. Now it's leveling out again. It'll probably go down again because there's a glut of milk in this country. But that's the way politics is played, Fred. One hand washes the other out there. To hell with the people back home. It's amazing. All right, Fred. Of course, since this is the cow report, Fred, when we get stories about cows in the news, we got to report them. Well, over there in New Delhi, India, the cows are coming and wandering in the streets and just wrecking havoc over there in India. Cows are back on New Delhi streets, and not by popular demand. And they're just becoming a traffic hazard. And of course, you can't. They're sacred, Fred. You can't eat them. You can't be mean to them. They're treated like humans because the Hindus over there actually believe that they're mother cows. Call them gomatas. And
What do they call the bulls?
probably the same thing, Fred. But it's unfortunate that people are starving over there, and there's all these cows just roaming around. Can't eat them because you might be eating your ancestor.
Well, what's the difference?
I don't know. All right, Fred, what do you got? Well, somebody said there might be a call on line 2, so we'll see if there is. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, hi, Chuck.
Hello.
I have a question for you.
All right.
What do you think of Steve Gunderson's positions on social issues?
Which social issues in particular?
Well, let's say abortion and gay rights and crime and federal funding of art and similar issues.
Federal funding of
Well,
ours.
that's the National
Okay.
Endowment of Arts.
Well, it'll take us a little while to answer that, so we'll try and get to those. Thank you. All right, Fred, the caller wants to know what I think about Gunderson's position on abortion. Number one, unfortunately, at one time it appeared like Steve Gunderson was a pro-life candidate. But as the years have worn on, we started hearing rumors that I think the first one was that he voted to allow abortions on military bases. Was that overseas? Do you remember that vote? That was the first inkling that he was shifting on that issue. And then he voted for the
Fetal
tissue research bill, which is very serious. Talking about Hitler and stuff, I mean, that stuff sounds like right out of Nazi Germany, Fred. When you, if somebody explained the procedure on this fetal tissue research when they take it from a live fetus, quote unquote, that is going to be aborted. They want to have fresh live cells. So I've seen photographs, and it's hard to explain without the photographs. I'm going to get one of those and show it on the air, Fred, but evidently they pull the baby's head out of the womb and expose it so a doctor can actually suck the brain out with a giant hypodermic needle and then push the baby back in so then they can perform the abortion. And that's the only way that it's legal. So then they can use those brain cells for research in Alzheimer's disease or whatever they're using it for. So Steve voted for that fetal tissue research, and that was unfortunate. I think that pretty much tore it between him and the pro-life movement in Wisconsin, and from what I understand, they're not going to endorse him this year. Gay rights, he voted for the gay rights, and he was one of the main pushers of gay rights in the military, and there's going to be some serious consequences. I'm sure the military is already covering up some murders and some deaths that have happened because of that.
He's been acting as their spokesman in Congress, and he also spoke at a fundraiser for the gay rights lobbying organizations.
So he's pretty much, I think he's pretty much came out of the closet on that issue, and he mentioned that he has a male companion and had some speech in Baltimore recently, and I think the Milwaukee Sentinel really quizzed him hard on that issue. Federal funding of the arts. On that,
National Endowment of Arts.
National Endowment of the Arts, he's one of the many congressmen that voted to continue funding. And the National Endowment for the Arts has been under scrutiny and pressure and a lot of controversy for years, going back to Mapplethorpe's blasphemous artworks and some of the more recent things that have came out of there. So I guess Steve voted for continued funding of that. On crime, I don't really know too much about his voting record.
I will say this in relation to Steve. He did vote against that bill today in Congress.
Yeah, yesterday, Sunday, he did vote against the crime bill, I think because of the assault weapons that evidently these assault weapons are getting into what they call shotguns now, Fred. It's not these Uzis and stuff anymore. It's just simple shotguns with fancy stocks on them or something. To make them look fancy, but they're just basic home protection. When you dial 911, Fred, and you get a busy signal, or you get somebody on the other line that says we'll have somebody there in 20 minutes, and you got somebody breaking down your door wanting to get in, you don't have time to wait that 20 minutes. You've got to act right then.
Quite true.
In a defensive
you
manner.
need something to protect yourself.
And you don't take away the guns, the pistols of farmers and law-abiding citizens back here in the 3rd District, because we've got 50 to 70,000 heavily armed gang members in Los Angeles County. It just doesn't stack up. You don't take the guns away from everybody in the country. You go out and you take the guns away from the gangs that are roving and looting and killing and pillaging in Los Angeles and Milwaukee and Chicago. And leave the law-abiding farmers
shootings
and people that are protecting their homes. You leave them alone. And so they've got it. It almost appears like as you saw in the vote yesterday, Fred, almost 60 conservative Democrats said, I ain't touching this one with a 10-foot pole. I've got to go back to my constituents. And if they start calling me a gun grabber, I'm out of here. I'm not going to get reelected. So the liberal, left-wing Republicans put that bill over the top for Clinton. Once again, the Clinton Republicans. Back in the 80s, Fred, they used to call them Reagan Democrats. Now it's totally flipped, and you got Clinton Republicans. Isn't that amazing how times change? Okay, Fred, I think we probably answered that question. And what do you got there, Fred?
Well, also from the Wanderer of St. Paul, a Catholic paper, When Green is Red by Thomas Droleski. He's a professor, one of our colleges back in the East. The Western world greeted the demise of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics on December 12, 1991 as the end of communism. Most of the Soviet satellite governments of Eastern and Central Europe had shaken off the shackles of Marxist rule in 1989, with Poland leading the way. And while communist or quasi-communist governments continue to enslave the peoples of mainland China, North Korea, Vietnam, Laos, Ethiopia and Somalia, or what is left of it at the time, the Congo, Cuba of Fidel Castro, and many commentators in 91 believed that the dangers posed by communism had passed. But a camouflaged communism emerged shortly thereafter. It looms today before us in the form of the specter of world government.
Okay, Fred, you know, you're talking about the so-called demise of the communists in Eastern Europe. Out of over 20 nations that supposedly communism fell, you know, from the East Berlin East, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria, Soviet Union, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. Out of all those, over 20 nations, all but 5 of them now are back to being controlled by communist governments. Only 5 are still free. So where's the big collapse of communism?
I know in Lithuania they returned the communists to power.
Latvia, the Czech Republic, and a couple others is all left. Right?
Estonia has a non-communist at the head, but the communists control the legislature and just about everything else there.
There's only 5 true
and they
governments that are
also
anti-communist.
have their troops there. They haven't removed the troops, which were supposed to have been long gone, the Russian troops.
Well, yeah, I guess they're cutting a deal with America once again to get more money. They're saying if you finally pull those troops out by the end of August, then we'll give you some more of them billions that Steve Gunderson voted for. Now that's another one of Steve's mistakes, is he voted for billions for the Russian mafia, Fred, but not a dime for Western Wisconsin. Isn't that amazing? Billions for the Russian mafia. That's pretty much what's going on.
One thing I think that we're going to have to reckon with is they're expending vast sums of money on updating and modernizing their missile system. And they're going to have more accurate and bigger missiles than they have today.
Okay, Fred. Well, we'll see if we still got that caller on line 1. If not, we'll go on to the next issue. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Chuck. I just have a question for you. I'm a registered voter in the 3rd District, and I'm looking at all the different candidates, and it's all kind of confusing. I guess my question is, without referencing any other of the candidates, sum up why I should vote for you.
Okay, thank you. So you know, Fred, she wants me to sum up why she should vote for me.
Yes.
Well, it's very simple. I'm the best candidate. I'm not beholden to any political action committee. I haven't taken a dime. The congressman that's in there now, upwards of 60% of every dollar he gets, 60 cents on the dollar, comes from the Monsantos and the other large agribusiness type people, and also other PACs. But that's one thing that I want to get rid of, is get rid of this PAC influence. It's special interest influence. It's a stranglehold on the United States government. They come out there, they throw the money around, They throw big money around. They also throw big threats around. Either vote our way or else. I want to introduce a law in 1995 that makes it illegal to take any political action money or any special interest money, whether it's left wing, right wing, or middle of the road. There's no reason to be taking, what those are, Fred. Those are legal bribes.
Well, what would you do about the money the unions spend to elect candidates and do it independently of the candidate himself?
That's special interest and political action money, Fred. They'd both be outlawed. If you can show some kind of tie there.
Well, the tie is they spend money to elect the legislators who are in accord with their philosophy.
Yeah. So the more money and the more weight you can throw around. You know that former congressmen and senators can walk right on the floor of the House at any time and lobby a legislator down there and say, "You better vote our way." It doesn't matter what's going on the House floor. These guys are hired by the big government, not the big government, the big ones like 3M and Ford and GM. They hire these people, these former legislators, to go out there and twist arms with the current legislators to make them vote a certain way. And it's gotten to where they're controlling government, Fred. So I'm not going to be beholden to any of that political action stuff. And I want to also introduce some legislation to pull a lot of that foreign money that's going down these foreign rat holes and into the Russian mafia and all these other phonies over there that are getting these billions. Transfer that money back to the United States. Give it back to the taxpayer, first of all, but also to help like the family farmers that are hurting and to help back home. We need all the help we can get in this country. If we close off the borders right now and didn't let in one immigrant or 1 ounce of heroin or cocaine, the problems that the illegal drugs, the foreign drugs, and the foreign illegal aliens, those two problems alone will take 20 years to work their way through the system. It takes a whole generation for those two problems to work their way out. And we're into our 3rd generation of people being destroyed by drugs in this country. First generation was where we're talking about millions of youth was in the 1960s, the generation I grew up in. Now the Generation X has come up, and they're the 2nd generation. Generation X now is starting to have the crack babies and the heroin babies that are born addicted, and the AIDS babies. Those types of problems were spawned back in the 60s, Fred, from our excesses, from the free love and the free drugs and all the problems that we're seeing in the 1990s were spawned out of the rebellion of the 1960s. And did you know, Fred, that 85% of the Vietnam veterans are experiencing various degrees of that syndrome from being in Vietnam, post-traumatic shock, post-traumatic stress syndrome from the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not getting much treatment for that. We need to work and help them, Fred, before we turn this into the dumping ground for the world and let everybody and anybody that wants to flood into this country.
Well,
We've got to help America first.
I had the opportunity of testifying in Menominee before the Assembly Veterans Committee, and I said that some of these veterans have slipped in between the cracks, and they need help to get out. And one thing they need, some of them need God's help.
You know, Fred, I was talking to one today that's living out of his car, a Vietnam veteran, and he's kind of bitter about it. He says he sees the foreigners coming in taking jobs, and he can't even find a decent job, so he's living out of his car, getting by where he can. That's not right. We've got to take care of the Americans that are here now before we try and take care of the world. We've got to keep this country strong, healthy, anti-drug. You know, we've got to build this country back up, raise up that American Dream Index, Fred, back to acceptable levels. And then we can help around the world. But I think we went overboard, Fred. We've gone too far to thinking that we can be the cops of the world,
Well,
the saviors of the world.
we're transferring good-paying jobs south of the border and out across the Pacific, And if you go into the stores today and you look at the labels and clothes and lots of other things, you can't find an American-made television set. American-made watches are few and far between. Electronic equipment, it's all coming from overseas. Even cars, they may assemble them here, but the parts are being made elsewhere.
And the final reason, Fred, that I want people to vote for me is, excuse me, is that I don't want to become insulated out there in Washington and get to where I'm liking all these special bennies out there, all the the banking privileges and the franking privileges and all that stuff. So I'm going to introduce a bill that's going to get me back out of there in 8 years, whether I like it or not. Now, actually, Fred, I have signed, or will be signing tonight and mailing, the term limit pledge voters contract for a citizens Congress. It says, I believe our country must return to citizen government. I support term limitation as the essential step in the restoration of a citizens Congress. I, Chuck Lee, as a candidate for the public office of representative in the United States Congress, hereby freely and fully enter into this solemn contract with the voters of the 3rd District of the state of Wisconsin. As a member of Congress, I will sponsor or co-sponsor legislation that will send to ratifying conventions in all 50 states a constitutional amendment limiting congressional service to 4 two-year terms in the U.S. House of Representatives and 2 six-year terms in the U.S. Senate. And I will sign or file, if necessary, a discharge petition to bring this legislation to the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives, and I will vote in favor of this constitutional amendment. So there, Fred, I'm done in 8 years. If I can't get it right in 8 years, then I don't need to be out there anymore because of all the perks and the insulation, and you lose contact with your district. These are big districts, Fred. You're talking close to 500,000 people. You can't spend 10, 11 months in Washington and properly serve your people back in the 3rd District. You got to be back here amongst the people and finding out what their problems are. And with the giant staffs you got, there should be more being done. You just don't go to Washington and insulate yourself out there in the high life of Georgetown and the other suburbs of Washington. So there you have it.
Right.
So what do you think, Fred?
Yes.
You can't even vote for me till November.
Oh, yes.
All right. Let's take a call before we get into that newest subject there, Fred.
Okay, this was on something that
Because
we
we've
had
got some
talked
people
about
that have been
before,
waiting
but
about
that's okay.
15 minutes here. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hi. I'm sorry.
It's all right. You might just want to turn down your TV a little bit.
Okay.
By the way,
Fine.
what do you think of our bumper sticker tonight on the cow there? Are you there? Hello? Okay.
Yes, I'm there.
Okay.
Okay. I have been involved in politics in my previous lifespan, if that's a word that you want to go ahead and use. And I want to know a couple things. How do you plan on negotiating with your fellow representatives as you being, let's put some titles here, countrified, and they being cityfied? And how will you go ahead and support those ideals? And what will you do when it comes to negotiation, when you may have to compromise some part of what you want to get through? Do you understand what I'm trying to point out here?
Yeah, what happens
What
is,
means will you use to accomplish your means?
okay, well, what happens on a lot of these bills is they get porked up by the other legislators. They tack on stuff that's got nothing to do with it. There was a lot of stuff on the crime bill that had nothing to do with crime.
I understand that, but what will you use to negotiate, saying, okay, you get rid of this pork, and I will not demand this.
You don't have to compromise. You stick to what's right or what you feel is right and what your constituents are saying that they want. You stick to what the vast majority of your constituents want. You just don't compromise, even if you have to go down to defeat. Do you want somebody that's going to be wishy-washy all over on issues and compromise and sell out? Say there's an abortion bill that comes up or a pro-life bill that comes up that maybe sometimes we'll have an abortion over here and maybe sometimes over here we won't, and maybe sometimes here we'll have to cut the baby in half and let half of it live. And, you know, it gets to where you're compromising down, you get so watered down that you don't really stand for anything. So sometimes it's better to stand for what you believe in, whether it's liked or not, and then accept the consequences back home.
Because of my past history in the political atmosphere, I don't think that that's a realistic point of view, and there is a lot of compromise going on. So what I'm doing is just trying to express to you my past experience. And I do know that there is compromise, and it's very admirable that you want to go ahead and stick to your guns. I really admire that.
Well, thank you.
But if that is not possible, what means will you do to go ahead and at least get some part of what you want to accomplish through and past?
Okay. Well, thank you, caller. Well, you know, Fred, the more you compromise, then you're cutting deals for stuff way down the line. And then before you know it, you're painted into a corner, and you're not the congressman that you claim to be when you get sent out there.
Very true.
And you lose respect from both sides and in the middle. You know, you're all over the place on issues. You got to stick to them, to what you believe in. If you don't, and if you start selling out on one issue, then they're going to come back and say, yeah, but you sold out on that one, you compromised that time. Why don't you compromise this time? Come on, let's get this thing through. That's why we get these $20 billion bills that get pushed up to $33 billion in a matter of weeks through compromise. Well, I need a bridge over here in this district, and I got to get reelected, man. So give me that $20 million bridge, and then I'll vote for you on that cattle bill over there in Arizona. And you lose all respect, and you've got to stick to your guns, right or wrong, sometimes.
Right.
So, Fred, have you got something short and sweet there, because we're running out of time.
On the federal crime bill, and I was looking for this before and I couldn't find it. Clinton's men are advertising, this is by Pat Buchanan, also from the Wanderer, and the date of August the 25th. Clinton's men are advertising the bill is putting 100,000 cops on the street. Tough stuff, right? Well, 100,000 cops for 6 years cost $70,000 to put a cop on the street for 1 year. Added up, it adds up to $42 billion.
Just for the police?
Yes. How much do the feds pony up for the cops? About $8 and $8 billion, writes Scott Hodge of the Heritage Foundation. The feds are thus fully funding about 20,000 new cops. Even this money is to be used as bait to hook communities into hiring the cops. The feds bail out, leaving the communities that have brought in scrambling to find the $30 billion necessary to keep the new cops.
It's amazing, Fred, what they do.
And it puts 2 social workers on for every cop on the payroll.
Well, you have to have social workers out there to be referees for those midnight basketball games. Go ahead, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, say, who's running the switchboard tonight?
Why, what's wrong?
You got a kind of like a static coming over when you're talking there. So, you know, it's funny, every time you're on, you always get something either high or low or static. It'd be nice if they could run that switchboard a little better.
Well, you see the sound's coming through. Is it okay now, or is it still?
Well, it's been a little static. I can't tell now. I got the TV turned
yeah.
down, but it'd be nice if they could control that a little bit. I know you get some good hard workers there, and I know they do their best, but it'd certainly be nice if they could. Say, have you heard any polls out on Mr. Agriculture, Steve Gunderson?
Well, the only, I've called Washington and talked to reporters in Madison and in Milwaukee and Minnesota, and I called Gunderson's office yesterday and asked where's the polls at. Every time you hear about the 3rd District race, Fred, they say it's one of the 10 most watched races out of over 500 federal races. It's one of the 10 most watched races in the country. Well, where's the polling at? People want to know where Brill's at, where's Gunderson at. There's 4 Democrats. They want to know what kind of national polling has been done there. And there's no polling coming out. The only poll I've heard, Fred, is that there's some polling out that shows that Gunderson's negatives are very high. In other words, people in the district are saying that he has a lot of negatives, that they've got a lot of things that they're a little unsure about him about. And whereas Brill's negatives are low. That's the only poll that I've heard of, and I haven't really seen the actual results in that other but word of mouth, Fred. It's just it's been unusual. So, caller, you still there?
Yeah, I agree. I think he's very high on negatives from what I hear, too. And, I heard another candidate on the radio here just a couple of days ago, and he said we have 3 farms a day going out of business in Wisconsin. Mr. Agriculture, Steve Gunderson, tells us one thing back home, and when he's out there, he does a different thing. And I think we need to take care of these family farmers, and I hope they wise up and vote the incumbent out.
Well, thank you, caller. Fred, that's why in January of 1995, we're going to introduce the Family Farm Preservation Act of 1995. It's going to take back some of that Russian mafia money, and it's going to invest it. It's going to grow those family farm economies, Fred. Just like Clinton says, we're going to grow this economy, we're going to grow these farm economies, and we're going to help get young farmers back into farming. And we're going to use retired farmers for mentors to help those young farmers learn how to farm good farms. And
Yes.
through grants and short, long-term, very low-interest loans. I mean, if we can hand money to our former communist enemies and say, here, do with it what you will, and some of it ends up making submarines that could eventually possibly be used against us, then we can help the farmers in this country.
Well, there's going to be one difficult thing. Today, it's the big guys can buy in quantity, and the small ones cannot. And the local feed mill and the local implement dealer can't compete with the big agribusinesses and sell to the farmer at a price that he can afford. The big guy is the one that gets all the breaks, the corporation farmer.
That's why we're going to work on freeing up some of this land that's tied up by the government, and we're going to start giving it back to people who want to go into farming. It's not going to be 40 acres and a meal, Fred. It's going to be 200 acres and a brand new tractor, and some of the implements go with it. We're going to help young farmers get back involved in farming, get these 4-H's and the future farmers of America, get them back in gear again, and get agriculture back as the #1 priority. All right, Fred.
When I worked for the National Federation of Independent Business as a district manager, I recall vividly on calling upon a implement dealer, and as I'm talking to him and having a nice friendly chat, a truck goes by with 3 or 4 tractors on it, good-sized tractors. And he says to me, "You see those there?" He says, "They're going to one of the farms, one of the corporate farms, just west and north of town."
Well,
And
Fred,
we looked, and it went down maybe a half a mile or a mile down the road and turned to the right and went up north, and he was right. And then a feed truck came in, and he says, "Oh, that's probably going to the same place."
well,
And they went there, and he says, we don't sell them anything except maybe a few nuts and bolts and some other things that they got to have right away.
Well, what we got, Fred, is over in the Soviet Union, they're junking that communal system of giant farms, conglomerates run by managers and stuff. and they're going back to the small family farms and back to private ownership of land. We're going in the opposite direction over here. We're going to bigger and more conglomerated super farms, and we're writing off
too?
the family farms.
You go into your stores here today, and you look and you see, like when we went up to Farm and Fleece, I had one rack with shirts, sports shirts there, American made, and maybe about 20 racks that were made in every country outside of the U.S.
Okay, Fred, well, you've heard about the Big Tent theory in the Republican Party.
Same thing with Kohl's.
You've heard of the Big Tent theory, Fred?
Yes.
In the Republican Party. It's a new theory pushed by Haley Barbour, the national chairman of the Republican Party. Well, I want to show you how bad trouble is in the Big Tent, Fred.
Yes.
Here's the headline. Human blockhead guilty in Lobster Boy's murder. In a trial that exposed the dark side of the carnival circuit, a jury convicted the human blockhead in the contract slaying of his stepfather, the claw-handed, stub-legged Lobster Boy. Now that's how bad it's getting in the Big Tent. That Republican Party's in big trouble, Fred.
Well, not everybody agrees with that big tent that's in the party, you know.
Well, there's just another case of that Big Tent in big problems. Big trouble in the Big Tent, Fred. Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, this is the common man.
Oh, yeah, Common. Yeah, I heard about you. I've heard about you out there. What do you got to say to that?
Yeah, I got a few comments from the first guy there, your old buddy Buck. He still doesn't seem to like you very much.
What, you guys got a running feud there on my show or something?
I don't know. I can't figure it. I don't know why he doesn't like me. It seems like we agree on most of the same things. But
Yeah. Well, we're running out of time, so let's have it.
the one thing I was,
When's your show on?
first thing I was going to ask you was, were you out at Red Cedar Racetrack Friday?
No comment. When's your show on?
You don't want to mention those little. I'm looking at something that looks like resembles $100 bill with your face on here. It says vote November 8th.
Well, that's that new money you've been hearing about. It'll be all over in January of '95. It'll be everywhere.
They really told me they were all over the place, but
Yeah.
But I was a little bit late getting out there. When I got out there.
Okay, Common, we got about 2 minutes left. What's your comment?
Well, I was between that and by the way, I like that bumper sticker. That looks kind of cute. Animal rights lovers will probably go nuts over that.
Yep. They are very delicious, Fred.
Well, you said something. You said something about my. Oh, by the way, maybe I should do this since I haven't. This is kind of all fit as all three here. Matter of fact, Roy, and we're all getting attacked here. Somebody called in on that easy access line, and they didn't like our shows. They jumped on him, and they jumped on my show, and they jumped on your show.
Well, you know, that's really something, Fred. Here we've got the best show on TV, the highest ratings. Got people calling in, and we got feelers out there to go national, and people are bad-mouthing the show.
Yeah.
It's amazing what they'll do out there, Fred. Well, we're almost out of time, Fred. We're going to take one more call.
You didn't tell about that call that came in. The guy wanted to know about the tires, the used tires.
Oh, yeah. We mentioned that Jim Grainbelt, Kung Fu Garbage Cop, he's got a tire drive on for Aristide. And they're storing them down there in Florida waiting for the invasion so they can use the tires for necklacing. That's all there was to it. So they'll probably be, you can take your tires out to the 8 Mile dump out there, out on Q, and for $2 you can donate your tires to the recycling bin out there, and they'll make sure they get down to Florida so that they can be used in the invasion to necklace Aristide's enemies down there.
When you say necklace, what do you mean by that?
Well, they take a little gasoline, they pour it in the tire, and they put it on your head, and they light it on fire. Aristide, that's one of his trademarks. He's been doing that for years.
Is that right?
Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Well, first of all, I want to tell you I enjoy your show.
Well, thank you.
Watching it. Say, I got a question for you. About a year ago in a Leader Telegram, Dunn County spent like $100,000 on this night vision equipment for catching all these kids and all these drug dealers up there. Whatever came of that? I've never seen nothing in the paper anymore, nothing.
Well, you know, they have been doing some drug busts over at Dunn County, and they seems to be where a lot of the busting goes on, but it's usually marijuana, Fred. You know, the big problems that we've got an epidemic of heroin emerging in this country that's going to thwart or it's going to just overpower any marijuana epidemic. We've got 25 million people smoking marijuana with not too many problems. But if you get 25 million people using heroin, you're going to see some major problems, Fred. Even with 2.5 million or 250,000.
Right.
We've already got problems with 250,000 heroin addicts. Wait till we get over the million mark, and you're going to have some major problems. But we got to go. We're over the line here. We want to thank you for tuning in. We'll see you again next week right here on the Cow Report. I've been your host, Chuck Lee, Roy Rogers Hoff, Fred Stafford, Cliff and Chris Economaki, the whole crew.
Good
Thank
night.
you, and we'll see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Yeah, that figures, Fred.
There's this really good show on PAC called Beans, and I wish that would please be played more because I really enjoy watching it. That Beans, that's kind of cute. Well, this is pretty neat.
I want to say that I support Chuck Lee fully in his race for congressional, whatever it is.
I'm watching a program right now where a person is wearing a gross mask and drinking some kind of medication, and now he's talking about stuffing a cat into a bag. I think it's vulgar, and I think it's totally unnecessary to show this on television. I also would like to ask you why our tax dollars have to pay for garbage like this, including the program Common Man and the Cow Report. It's totally worthless. I'm making a complaint to the City Council.
Producing a public access TV program is now as easy as making a phone call. You can use the public access comment line to talk about anything you want, even the program you just watched. Calls to Easy Access will be played on the Public Access channel. Just call 833-9554. Easy Access, the Public Access comment line, 833-9554.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled